Shanae Chapman, thank you for joining me today. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you for having me.
We were introduced through Amy Hamans, who is the founder of Beneficent. And when she reached out to me, she said, you need to speak to Shanae Chapman. To start, Shanae, this is probably the most challenging question I'll ask throughout our conversation because it's going to be asking you to tell the story of your life and career in just a couple of minutes, and you've accomplished so much. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, absolutely. And Amy is amazing, just smart and brilliant, and she's so good about connecting people who should know each other. So very happy that she connected us together. So thank you, Amy, if you're listening. And yeah, for me, I grew up as a very creative kid in North St. Louis. It's a lower income neighborhood. I was the first in my family to graduate from college, and it really was important for me to find a way to use these creative skills. And I studied communication and graphic design and web design and coding. And I wanted to figure out a way to use these creative skills and also make a living and also be able to have like the American dream, So I graduated from St. Louis University, did a bachelor's in communication and certificate in African American studies. Then I moved to Boston, where I did my master's degree at Northeastern University and studied information systems and usability and heuristics and really learned more about how do these systems work? What does it mean to have a user-centered design process? What does it mean to actually design technical tools that can be understood by the average person, and that whole scientific process of keeping the user forefront and keeping the user in the process? That just hooked me, and I knew that I wanted to have a way to contribute to this field. I started working in technology in Boston after I graduated from Northeastern University, got very involved with UXPA Boston, learned a lot about Amy and her work there as well. They were so giving of their time and energy to me as a new person coming into UX right out of grad school, not knowing how do you actually apply what you learn in school to working in the real world, working with product managers and engineers and understanding design patterns. And everyone was just so giving of their knowledge, wanting more people to get involved and wanting more hands to contribute to how this works. So I learned a lot from my mentors and sponsors in UXPA Boston and was able to navigate to different UX positions at IBM, at the MathWorks, working on MATLAB, at Akamai. And some of those positions came up at the UXPA Boston meetings. So people would announce, hey, I'm hiring. Hey, I have these opportunities. And having that ability to connect with people in real time and learn more about how they lead and their teams and their cultures, and also what cool products they work on as well. I love education, and I started teaching at Fisher College in Boston and Lesley University, and was a guest speaker at Harvard as well. So being able to be part of the community that's sharing knowledge and continuing to learn as well is something that I'm very adamant about. So that's a little bit about me. I also am a consultant, so I think it's really important to have passion projects. And I started out as a grad student and college student working with student organizations, and then work with nonprofits, then work with small businesses, then work with public service programs and startups as well. So that's the nutshell of my career trajectory. And yeah, today I work in public service and continue my work as a consultant.
Thank you, Shanae. There's so much I'd like to unpack. The first thing I thought about in terms of Boston gets a reputation of not always being so friendly. The UX Boston community, very friendly.
Yes.
And you touched upon something, finding your first roles in that community.
Yeah.
It oftentimes, a theme coming up in these conversations with accomplished women like you is that the connections and relationships can really be key. I'm curious, what was your perspective of the environment in Boston?
Oh, good question. Boston has a history of racial tension as well. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, I've been watching the documentary about the Celtics with my husband called Celtic City. And hearing about the stories of the great Bill Russell and the busing in Boston and how there's been so much strife with race and class. And this is a place where people are taking the time to have those difficult conversations. And you're always going to have people who don't want to hear anything about progress, don't want to change. But at the same time, you also have a lot of people in Boston who care, who are open-minded, who are taking action and doing the work to make our communities better places to live. So there are people who really have the heart of service and want to do things together in community and make more access and more opportunities. So it's definitely a place where, for me, it took 2 years to really feel like it was home and to really find my people and find my communities, and going to places where I shared interests with people like UXPA Boston, National Society of Black Engineers. Like, finding these groups helped me find my people. And so I think that's really what you have to do if you're someone coming to Boston. You have to find your people who are interested in the same things that you're into, and you have to be proactive. No one's going to come to you and invite you to hang out. You may have to be the person to say, like, hey, do you want to go to this event, or do you want to go see this speaker? And being able to get out of your comfort zone was something that I learned as well, coming to a new city and finding an environment where if I didn't make moves, it was not going to happen.
I didn't know we bring up the Celtics today, but yay, Celtics.
Yes. Jason Tatum, also from St. Louis. So yes, represent. Yes, I hope he feels better very soon.
Get well, Jason Tatum. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting you brought up Celtic City. My son and I have been watching it too. And the perspective, and I think it's so important to share. You mentioned the amazing Bill Russell and his experience versus there's a whole story around Bob Cousy's experience and how Bob Cousy wasn't even at the time, and admittedly even now as a 90-something-year-old man, said, I wasn't really recognizing at all that my experience wasn't everyone's. And to your point, really understanding that the existing lens you have may not be the experience of others. Is that part of what brought you to this community initially?
Yeah, and I think it's something also there about that empathy piece and having space to recognize that people may have the same company as an employer, for example, or they may have the same product that they use, but they're using it a different way because they have different needs and they have different ways of approaching how they're going to adopt this product or how they're going to engage with this company. So being able to like take those experience, for me, my lived experience as a African-American woman, often overlooked, and having the ability to see like who's not at the table, whose voice is not being heard, and how do we make sure that we get them in our research studies as well, and learn from the people that we don't hear from often, and make sure that we're building products that are inclusive, accessible, and get the job done.
You had mentioned, Shanae, your consulting business, and there's so many thread lines throughout your career. I'd love to talk about your background in civic tech and your consulting business. Nerdy Diva, you're the CEO and founder. Can you speak a bit to the charter and mission behind your business?
Yeah, I actually came up with the idea of this business when I was a grad student at Northeastern. I was living in JP at the time, and I knew that it was important to take like my lived experience and be able to also share that as we build new digital products and services. So the idea with Nerdy Diva is to not only build new technology and new tools, but to do that responsibly, making sure that it's inclusive, equitable, accessible, and aligning with creating more connection and creating just connections with that as well. So making sure that we're doing things the right way.
Now, thank you. And we're going to be talking about a number of different topics. The mission behind Lift Up Connections is to bring women together, all types of women, women in tech, and share our stories and lessons learned along the way. And where I wanted to start, a couple of questions. But the first question was, with your accomplished career, if you could go back to when you were coming to Boston for the first time and starting out your career, given what you've learned over the years and the experiences you've had, what would you tell that younger self of yours and that younger version of you? What would you tell them in terms of the top lessons you've learned?
Yeah, I heard this from someone and it stuck with me. When you are at a job, you should learn or earn, or preferably do both. And if you're not learning anymore, and if you're not earning enough, it's time to move on. It's time to find a new adventure. I've been blessed to be in situations where I've had opportunity to learn a lot from brilliant people around me. But if I was stuck in a position where I'm not getting to a higher leadership level, or I'm not getting more opportunities for responsibility, or I'm not being stretched, then I know that I have to find those opportunities for myself. So being able to understand what does it mean to learn more every year, and what does it mean, especially for women, to earn more and not be afraid to say like, hey, I need to have this 6-figure income. I need this amount of stock. I need to be able to have the salary and the expectations similar to what the men are making at the company as well.
There's something going through my mind because you mentioned it, Shanae, while you were introducing yourself, and you're mentioning it now. Feeling seen in your work and your life, and not always feeling seen. There's been a theme coming up for everyone who I've been talking about, that there's moments in your career that we're feeling unseen, we're feeling that we're unheard, our value isn't being appreciated. And as you're mentioning, if that's happening, it's upon us to do something. And I wonder, it's really, really messy right now in the tech industry, and a lot of people are feeling unseen. Based on your experiences going through those periods and still owning your worth, do you have recommendations for people right now who are feeling unseen and not knowing what to do next?
Yeah, I think the first step is that awareness that this is a heavy time period that we all are in right now. There's a lot of change that has happened in the past couple of months, and there's a lot of instability, and we're still wondering like, what's next and where does this leave us? And I don't know about you, but all my plans for 2025 have been changed. And so I'm pivoting and thinking about new ideas, and also processing. Like, it's emotional as well, and taking space to process those emotions. For some of us, it can be a grieving process. This is not the outcome that I expected. And I'm sure for a lot of people, this year of the transitions with the new administration has left a lot of worry and a lot of unexpected occurrences, and grieving the ideals that you had and facing the realities. Like, this is where we are now. How can we continue to move forward? How can we continue to push back? How can we continue to hold our leaders accountable and also hold ourselves accountable? So it's definitely a process, and taking space to be kind to yourself, going on walks, connecting with your people, connecting with your tribe that gets you. I wholeheartedly believe in therapy. I think it's a good idea. I think most people should take some time to get to know a therapist, and just really practicing gratitude as well. Like, what is it that you have that no one else can take away? Like, that may be love from your partner or your friends or your cat or your dog, like whatever it is that makes you feel happy. How can we also remember that there's joy and light during this time as well?
I had wondered, you're touching upon this, that there's been so many shifts. There's been a messy time in the tech industry. There's been the transition in January of administrations. You're also coming from the civic tech world. I'm based right outside of DC in Arlington. I have a lot of friends and former colleagues who are in the civic tech world, where it's an understatement to say it's been a rough go over the last few months. And a lot of my Lift Up program and my Lift Up offering came out of a pretty major inflection point for me, where I was going, what I expected didn't come to be.
Yeah.
So Lift Up came from really considering what I wanted to have next. Can you tell us a little bit about your story, Shanae? You've been a public servant, you've been working in the government. Can you share the work you've been doing in this space and what's been happening for you since January? I'd love to delve in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my position for the federal government is within an agency called GSA, which is the General Services Administration, responsible for real estate, so all of the government buildings on one side of the portfolio, and on the other side of the portfolio, professional services like IT and digital services. I worked on building out a new program called Voice of the Public, which leads research operations for our digital delivery teams that work on government platforms like login.gov, USA.gov, all these high touch point web applications, making sure that we're also doing research with the American public that we serve and incorporating that feedback so that we continue to make improvements. And the goal has also been to work with various federal agencies and also share information with state and local agencies as well about research operations best practices and how we can use this feedback, this co-creation to deliver better web digital products for our public. So since January 20th, there's been a lot of changes, and a lot of the work that was started is being put on pause, taking away the ability to serve the public and keep them involved in their government has been a drastic blow. It has been really heartbreaking. I came to public service in order to make sure that we were doing technology for the good of the people. And I took the oath, like every public servant takes the oath, to uphold the Constitution and to make sure that we are protecting the citizens from any strife, any issues, domestic or foreign, and being able to deliver websites and applications on a small level helps the American public access their benefits like Social Security, like their federal student loan applications, like FEMA applications for assistance. There's so much that people access through government websites today that allows them to interact with their government in a real way and receive the benefits that they deserve. And it's sad to see that there's been so many cuts to different agencies and different teams that work on producing these services. So definitely at an inflection point of thinking about what do we do now? How do we make sure that we keep this administration accountable? How do we also think about ways to create more of these services within the state level, within the local level, within nonprofit organizations, within corporations as well? Like, how do we make sure that where we have access to people that we're able to incorporate their feedback and have this co-creation process?
I can tell it's only been since January, and you mentioned there's this period of grief that you have, but I can also say, well, first, Shanae, are you still in that period of grieving? I'm assuming you are.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's like some days I'm like, oh, okay, this has happened and I'm on to my next project. I'm working on my next course for LinkedIn. And then some days it really hits me. Like I see a news article, for example, that's talking about more cuts to the government. I'm like, oh my God, not another thing that we need, that I need, that my family needs, that my community needs. So it's really tough. It's still processing, still grieving as well.
And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what's happening to many people, including the civic tech workers. I'm wondering, you've also thought strategically about what actions you can take and how you can continue moving forward. And I know a lot of folks are feeling a bit hopeless in terms of what actions they can take For example, you mentioned let's hold the administration accountable and let's start really focusing in the civic tech space. Can we do more work at the state or local level? When you're thinking about your work and your mission and charter, in what ways are you taking action in that space now?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of research and study on disparities with Black maternal health versus our white counterparts, and that there's higher rates of death from childbearing and higher rates of complications as well. And something that I want to do is make it easier for Black women and their partners and their providers to be able to understand the process from conception through pregnancy through postpartum of what's happening for the woman in her body, what symptoms to look out for, when do you need to contact your doctor, what types of questions to ask your doctor, when do you need a second opinion, what are some symptoms to be mindful of during the process so that people have a way to be proactive and can monitor those symptoms and also have emotional support. Sometimes just having that additional reassurance that, oh, these are normal symptoms. Oh, like this is okay. Like this typically happens. And having that part of the process can be really helpful also. So I created a custom ChatGPT app called Mocha Mama, which is essentially an AI doula that Black women and their partners and providers can use to ask questions about the process of conception through pregnancy, through postpartum. And it really is a tool that can help people in the community today. So whether you're someone who is trying to get pregnant or currently pregnant, or you know someone who is going through pregnancy and postpartum, being able to have some resources to get more information and to have some of that reassurance and have ways to strategize how to communicate with the doctors and the nursing staff and how to know when you need additional assistance. And if you're not being listened to, what are the next steps for you to take so that's documented and so that you can find additional resources and support. And this came out of just seeing my family and friends go through really horrible experiences as Black women at a very vulnerable time, giving birth to new life and not feeling supported, not feeling like they had care from the clinical staff, using these AI tools for good and training it to be culturally sensitive and aware for the needs of Black women and their partners also. So that is the work that I'm doing, trying to do some public service in this day and age, using some AI tools, and hopefully it helps people have more conversations about patient experience and Black maternal health.
It's interesting. As you were sharing what you're working on, Shanae, you lit up. And you also have been sharing earlier that even during these challenging times, we need to find those moments of light and joy. First, if families would like to find your custom GPT, is it available for them to find?
It is. You have access to ChatGPT. Search for Mocha Mama. And yeah, you can use it today. And I'm always continuing to update the training data and improve the LLM. So yeah, I definitely would love people to test it out and give me feedback on it as well.
Absolutely. And we'll put the link in the notes for the episode. I mentioned to you that my venture Lift Up came out of a really messy middle. My story was I couldn't have ever envisioned going in this direction if things had just sailed along the way they had. And I'm wondering, before January, were you already working on Mocha Mama? Or when was there a point that you were thinking about working on this, and what was going on at the time? A lot of times I've been hearing, and myself included, that it comes up when things do go away from the plan we had, that some of these passion projects and glimmers of joy come out of those times. So I'm just curious, when did you start working on Mocha Mama, and was it at this key inflection point?
Yeah, it was something I actually started when I was like listening to the stories from my friends and from cousins who had gone through just really, really hard birthing experiences. And at the same time that we were having these conversations, I was also learning more about using AI tools and learning more about how you can use these tools to create agents and how you can train the data. And I thought, could we not have some AI tools that had more information to support Black women in their journeys? Isn't that something that we should do? And I did some research and I saw that this tool does not exist in this format. And I thought, oh, I should make that tool. And so being able to provide a resource that my friends and family can use brings a lot of joy to me.
How did you, as you've been describing the story of your career, Shanae, it does sound like you very much play it big. Oh, I'm finding this problem. I should build something and I should solve it. I'm wondering, how did you build that muscle of putting yourself out there, playing it big, taking action? A big theme that comes up with the women I'm working with is they have great ideas and they have a vision, but taking the steps and playing it build sometimes is a struggle. Do you have advice?
Yeah, I think it's the question, why not me? Why not me? If someone's going to do it, why not me? And just putting it out there. And also the mindset that it's all an experiment. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just being okay with trying something out, having that creativity, that curiosity to explore. We think we have to be perfect all the time. We think we have to get it right each time we do it. And no, you don't learn if you wait until it's perfect. You don't learn anything. So being able to see a problem, have an idea, test it out, get feedback, and keep improving it. It's the way that we build products and services. Why not apply that to our lives as well?
When Amy said you need to speak to Shanae, I mentioned researcher hat on. I needed to read up and read everything that you've been writing about and speaking about. And it really spoke to me. And I'd love to hear more about your story. I know you're teaching quite a bit. You mentioned you're teaching with LinkedIn Learning. You're teaching with Nielsen Norman Group as well. I was reading an article that you wrote, and it was related to AI. I believe it was a couple of years back now, about inflection points and now the dawn of AI and what that means for us. And I know you've been a huge advocate and champion for designing anti-racism into products and services. Can you speak to that work and the work you're doing and what's happened since you've written that article? Can you speak to that topic?
Yeah, I've been writing about inclusivity and biases and ways that teams can create more inclusive products, services, and teams since 2018. And it's been great to see more people look for this work in the 2020 and the Black Lives Matter movement years. But it's also tough to see people think that it was like a fad or just a moment. The work is still happening. The work is still necessary. And especially now as we see AI being used more often, it's important to understand that these systems are inherently built with biases. Not intentionally, but if you're not specifying that you're going to have tools that are inclusive, by default, they're not going to be inclusive. By default, they're going to have biases. So understanding that, we have to be specific, we have to be intentional about creating training data for AI tools that is inclusive, that is representative of various people and cultures, and also reduces biases. If you put trash in, you're going to get trash out. So be mindful of that. And knowing that as users of AI tools, we have to criticize and have that critical thinking cap on when we use these tools. Who's represented here? Who's not represented here? Is this data correct? Is it not correct? We have to do the additional homework to validate the information that the tools are giving us, and also write AI prompts that specify representation and make sure that we're doing our part as well to not just be consumers, but co-creators with the AI tools.
Mm-hmm. There's questions I ask on this program that I'm asking behind the scenes, but don't always ask publicly or say publicly. AI, I saw you've written a lot about Dr. Joy Buolamwini's work in this space. I'm a big fan as well. I'm a fangirl of Dr. Joy. In the UX space, we're both in the UX world, especially the UX research space. I hear a lot of UX researchers focusing on how we use AI to synthesize our research, like the research studies we're running. And behind the scenes, the conversations I'm having is that's not where we have the most value. Like, sure, you can use AI to synthesize your results, but as UX researchers, can we start having more of these conversations that you're having, that there's inherent bias in these systems? And how do we as researchers start identifying what we can do to improve that problem? It feels to me, and I'd love to get your take, Shanae, it feels to me that's a bigger problem to solve in a way UX researchers can start thinking through the implications of AI. It's not either or, but when I hear most of the discourse being about how can we synthesize our interview data versus what you talk about, there's a real difference. I'm curious your take on that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely that system level thinking. Like, how do we use these systems, and how do we understand that these systems are going to be used by our teams, by researchers, designers, product managers, but also our customers? This wide array of audiences with various skill level with these tools are going to use systems that are giving them information that they may assume is just accurate. So how do we build in guardrails? How do we build in ways to protect data and security? And in addition to that, also think about what the data is saying in terms of representation, in terms of accessibility needs as well. Is it saying anything at all or nothing? Who is it excluding? Who's included in the discussion and who's not? And so applying that to this idea of, yes, people are going to use these AI tools. How do we make sure that we're providing information that is actually helpful and not harmful? How do we help them understand when they are potentially putting themselves at risk if they're entering sensitive data? How do we help them even with using plain language? How do we make sure that the way that the tools, the prompts are set up, that's easy for someone to understand who may have English as a second language? There's so many use cases that we haven't had the time or energy to get to. And I think that's the big way that we can use our background in user-centered design. How do we use this to become better co-creators with AI tools and not just leave it to folks who care about building the technology and not as much about the impact it has on people?
Part of my goal through these conversations, a couple of themes have come up in all of my conversations. It came up with Amy Hammonds. We spoke a couple of weeks ago, and it just came up. It's top of mind. I spoke with a UX luminary, Tamara Adlin, who's been in our field for 25 years. And the conversation that came up is that for all women, also women in tech, and you spoke to this, like we have to advocate for our worth. And she said, the more women in tech can have conversations about finances and money and how we're approaching negotiations and how we're approaching revenue streams, the better for all of us to start having those conversations. I know you've also spoken up about in the context of starting your consultancy, but also having other work, whether it's been full-time work or contract work, the importance of multiple revenue streams. Can you speak to that a little bit and how you've strategically thought about that as you built your career?
Yeah, I think it's so important to have a plan B or plan C. And I've gone through 2 layoffs in my career, and being able to have options when my full-time job did not go as expected has been a lifesaver. So being able to have a consulting business that I can ramp up as needed, or I can put on pause as needed, having the options to teach and share knowledge, which I love to do, but also finding ways to do that in spaces that value my expertise and value that connection that I have with the students and learners. And also thinking outside the box, like having options way outside of technology, thinking about real estate. I'm a property owner and landlord as well, and continuing to grow in that space, thinking of different ways to build generational wealth. And I didn't come from money. I came from a low income, predominantly Black neighborhood, and had these role models, my mom and the people in my community, who showed me that it's so tough to make do with very little, but you do the best you can. And if you have the opportunity to continue to grow, take those opportunities. Keep looking for opportunities to grow what you have and share it with your community as well. How can I make sure that I'm setting myself up for success and leaving a legacy for my family and who's coming after me as well?
Was this always part of your mindset growing up, or is this something your mindset has shifted over time? I wish I had spoken to myself in my early 20s to give some of my financial and life lessons back to that younger me. Was this always instilled in you that you did want to focus on, this education and generational wealth, or did that mindset grow over time?
I did not have the vocabulary when I was in my 20s. I didn't know that
Yeah.
generational wealth was a thing,
Yeah.
but I knew that I didn't want to stay at a low income rate. Like, I didn't want to stay where I was. I knew that I wanted to have more options in my life. I knew that I wanted to have that freedom to be able to choose where I work and what type of work I did. I wanted to be able to travel. I wanted to be able to see the world. And I knew that having the education was going to be a great way for me to do that. And taking in knowledge, not just in school, but also from the people around me. Like, who's making moves that allows them to have more freedom and more options, and learning about ways to build wealth, learning from other people about like things like stocks and like the 401ks and RSUs for some of the companies that own stock, like how to negotiate for salaries and to make sure that you have some good savings and a safety net if something goes sideways. You can tap into some of that as well. So just having these options, learning over time, and just adding to that plethora of ideas, taking it all in, learning each year, what can I do? What are some options? And maybe I can't do everything right now. What's something I could think about doing in the next 5 years or 10 years or so?
Mm-hmm.
Those are some of the things that have come to me, and just having this will to live and to live well and doing whatever it takes to get the things done. Yeah.
It's really been filling my cup, Shanae, having conversations with women like you and other women. It's women in tech, but it's also mission-driven women who are doing work and living their life aligned with their values and mission. And I'm wondering, the lens as a woman in tech and as an African American woman in tech, a question that I've been asking all of the women I've spoken with is the lived experience that we've all had is different from each other, but also from the men in tech living in this society. And I was curious, for the women listening in, given your lens, What have been the biggest challenges you've faced in the tech world? And do you have some advice or input on how you face them? What's been the hardest part for you navigating the tech world?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Unfortunately, I have a lot of examples. Tech is still a very male-dominated field. Many times people are surprised to see a Black woman leader who is technical in these spaces and who's had the experience that I've had. So there's often this sense of people don't believe that I know what I know and that I am who I say I am. So that's definitely tough, stepping into an environment where people doubt you. People don't believe that you're talented. And so you're starting from ground zero each time you join a new team. And you're connecting with people and trying to make them also see that you do know what you're talking about. You're here for a reason. You're not just a quota. You actually know what you're talking about. And for me, in addition to that, I've experienced like inappropriate sexual comments, assumptions that I was in a lower position. Someone thought I was a support or secretary, being left out of meetings, being yelled at in meetings, being micromanaged, dismissed disrespectfully in front of teams that I lead, and not following my direction as a leader. So it really depends on a situation, how I respond to that. Sometimes it's talking to that person one-on-one if we have that type of relationship, if I feel like that's a safe person I can talk to. Sometimes it's reporting it to HR and having that documentation. Definitely keep notes in case you need to file an employee complaint. Or if you need to reach out to an employment lawyer, that's why they're there. That's a whole industry. And knowing that you have rights as an employee, that you're not supposed to go to work and live in a hostile environment. So definitely make sure that you use the resources that are available to you. Another thing is asking for support from my manager or helpers, allies on my team, people who want to improve the culture, and enlisting them, asking them to support me in meetings, asking them, especially with interruptions, ask them to help direct the conversation back to me when someone interrupts me. Looking for people who are going to be advocates and stand up for me and support me, and really getting specific about what I need in order to be successful. Communicate what you need. You have to leave toxic environments. You have to leave because nothing is worth your peace. But that is the last straw. You may also consider leaving meetings if you're going to meetings and you're not being respected in those meetings. And again, documenting, saying, hey, I've gone to these meetings, this situation happened, and that's why I don't come to these meetings anymore. And have that documented for your leadership, for HR. And so they know that's why you're not going to a specific meeting, and have notes sent to you if you need that information. So just really taking care of yourself and your mental health, and know that you're not alone. And you can find people within your organization or outside your organization. And feel free to reach out to me as well, because I've gone through these scenarios, and definitely happy to talk with women or anyone else who's going through some challenging environments at work and discuss how you can navigate that if you choose to stay, and what does it look like, and using all your resources, using all your paid time off, using time for mental health, using that as well, making sure that you're taking care of yourself. So those are some of the challenges I've experienced and ways I've navigated those situations also.
Thank you. Thank you, Shanae. And there's so many paths we can take when we encounter those challenges. I've had some conversations with women who have had lifelong careers in tech who are making the decision to leave the tech world. I'm wondering, like you mentioned, that can be a last case scenario in certain organizations. You're still in the tech world and you're doing amazing work. Is that ever something that comes up that you're thinking, hey, I'm going to keep navigating the tech world? Or do you consider other opportunities outside of tech?
It's so funny. You know, I've actually left tech twice. I've left tech and I'm gone to work in academia, doing technology work at a university. And actually going into public service, government is very different than being at a tech company. So I've left tech, but I still do technical work. So that can be an option for people also. So think about you like healthcare, think about other opportunities, other industries where you can use your skills that may not be in a very like toxic, highly competitive, broy tech culture.
I love that recommendation. So I know we said the messy middle never really ends, and you are going through an inflection point, but with what do you think might be coming next? I know we talked about you'd like to stay in the civic tech world and make a real difference there. You're working on Mocha Mama, but what do you see coming next? Can you think out 6 months, or is that too far?
I don't know. And, I'm very much a planner, and I like having an agenda for my meetings. I like making sure that, we know what to expect. And I'm in a situation now where I don't know. So we'll see what happens. But I do know that I will continue to do the work that fills me up and look for people who are interested in partnering together. So that's all I have at this time.
I like that though. I also am a planner and want to know what's coming, and I have my agendas. Embracing the unknown is not a muscle that I've used to.
It's real hard.
Yeah. But there's something really freeing about it as well. So yeah, I appreciate that. This has been so valuable. I've learned so much, Shanae. I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you. Thank you for listening and for having this amazing platform and highlighting women. Thank you.
Well, of course. And you really highlighted for me just having this conversation with you and others that it's really helpful to know we're not alone and that we do have some shared experiences.
Yes.
So thank you for being so generous with sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anytime, feel free to connect on LinkedIn. We're connected, and anyone else listening, feel free to connect and reach out. And that's also something that has made me so committed to being connected with the UX community and still doing tech work, is that there's always good people. There's always good people who want you to succeed and who are looking out for you. And it's just really making sure that you stay connected and find your people.